What would you prefer?
Hey, I'm Obi. That's Ed, and we are drinking from the Garden Hose, your favorite podcast. Guess wherever you get your podcast, especially on Spotify and Apple. Ed, how are you today?
Obi, I'm doing doing well. I know I gave you the topic, but I'm going to go slightly off a little bit. I'm doing so well.
So, how well are you?
I'm doing so well. I got talked into going back to the Daytona 500 next year.
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. I can't wait to see that.
I was made an offer I couldn't refuse. My nephew decided to give up his bed in the camper, so I have a better sleeping arrangement. And they got Starlink, so I will have TV and internet while I'm in the campground with no cell service. So those two things right there, I'm like, I'm in.
Wow, I mean that's not a lot. A bed in a phone. I mean, it's really it. You're
Well, that and just playing the odds that it can't rain the whole weekend 2 years
no.
in a row.
No, it probably won't. I would agree with that. So you're going down. You're gonna redneck it up and enjoy the race this time and sit through the race, catch the whole thing.
Well, I was already thinking about that part, Obi. I'm going down to enjoy the tailgating and the experience. I may also explore the track stadium, whatever they call it, during the race. You know,
Okay,
see if there's sites, see what kind of concessions they have. I'm not sure I can sit through 200 laps. We'll see.
that's fair. That's fair. You will see. You know, you only need to sit through like the last five laps, right? Isn't that really? Isn't like like old school basketball? Just the end matters.
I think in racing it is. So anyway, I just wanted to share with our listeners about that because we did a whole episode on my miserable experience there. So we're going back.
And hopefully we'll improve our go around this time.
I hope so. I hope so. So Obi, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this just kind of came up not spontaneously for the podcast because nothing's spontaneous with this podcast. We are so meticulous with our script that we come up with. But what was spontaneous, I was walking the dog with my wife, and she just said to me, she said, "Hey, I got something. I have a woman at work that works with me. She thinks I'm nuts, and she thinks my boss is nuts, and she thinks my other coworker is nuts." I'm like, "Well, why do they think you're nuts?" And she goes, "Because I put two periods after, I two spaces after a period." And she tells me no one does that. Have you ever heard of that? And I said, "Yeah, I've heard of that. I mean, I still do two spaces most of the time because that's how I was trained. But yeah, apparently it's a thing. You don't have to do it anymore." So Obi, when I told you this topic, you're like, "Oh, we're gonna go there." So you're clearly aware of this in corporate America.
I'm clearly aware of it, and and I'm on board with the youngins on this one and the one space. What drives me crazy about this thing, though, is not whether it's two spaces or one space is proper. It's that on your phone, when you hit the space bar twice, it automatically puts in a period. So it's hard to not do it twice because on your phone, you go space, space, it puts a period for you. But when you're typing at your computer, you go space, space, and you messed up. You got to go back, put a period in. So this is really my bigger concern about the two spaces is how one type of electronic treats two spaces one way, and the other kind of electronic treats two spaces as two spaces.
So that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I knew that the two spaces wasn't needed anymore, and I actually knew it because like it gets corrected in Word and it gets corrected in Grammarly. And the thing about it is, I'm not even consistent with that. I think sometimes I'm probably two spaces, sometimes I'm one space because I'm typing fast. I don't even notice it. I probably send stuff out into the world with one and two spaces throughout the whole thing, and it might drive people crazy. But so my wife was like perplexed, and she's like, "Well, when the hell did this happen?" Like she completely missed the memo. I did some research, and Obi, do you know when this and how it changed, and do you know why it changed?
I'm not going to be able to give you a when, but I do know why.
Okay, tell me why.
This has to do with font size on old school typewriters. Every letter was the same size except for the period. So you had to put the extra space so your letters lined up in your newspaper and on your printing press and everything. And now with all our different crazy fonts, it doesn't matter anymore.
Right, because word processors do not allot the same amount of size for each letter. If an I gets less space than maybe a W would. whereas on a typewriter, an I got the same amount of space as a W. So officially, you're absolutely right. So for those of you old school listeners, you might have just learned something. And actually, I feel bad if you're just learning about this two space, one space thing for the first time. Hate to break it to you. But
well, some of our young listeners might be learning about the two space part for the first time.
That is true too. I don't feel bad about them. They just realized they missed out on something pretty cool that we used to always have to do two spaces. But and I actually used a typewriter. When I was in college, I typed all my papers on a typewriter with whiteout because I did not want to walk my ass down to the computer lab. But it was 2010 when Microsoft Word first added it as an error if you did two spaces.
Okay, 2010. I actually would have guessed even earlier than 2010.
So the article I read on the internet said this: if you are older than 37, you're a two spacer, and if you're younger than 37, you have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, I am older than 37, and I am was a two spacer, but I was easy enough to convince on the one space.
So Obi, so the amazing thing about it though is that you threw a twist on this. So in all my research on this, after my wife was talking to me about this, I did not realize, but you're absolutely right because I do it on the phone. I did not realize the phone is really set up for two spaces.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, and that's really my. So maybe 8-9 years ago now, I got into a conversation with a coworker of mine about this whole thing. And that's when I noticed it. And I think that's when I kind of started to go to the one space. She was actually fighting for two spaces, but I was like, one space is fine. The other thing is so many of my emails, Ed, because I'm not a prolific writer and I do program a lot, I'm a bullet point guy. So I don't have to worry about how many spaces because I hit enter and just go to the next line.
Boom, all right. Boom, so boom. You're a bullet point guy with no periods at the end of the bullet point, huh?
I think I put periods. I mean, there's depending.
But then you press return and then you're down on
the yeah. For the most part, I don't write emails that are more than 2 or 3 sentences in a series of bullet points, just because I'm not a good writer. And if I do it as bullet points, I think it helps people understand what I'm trying to convey.
All right. So Obi, so now that we've shared with readers about the two space, one space, and my wife was all, well, actually, here's the really interesting thing about it. My wife could really care less. She just learned something new. You don't care. Actually, you're fired up about your phone. I don't really care. I told you I do one space, two spaces. But this young lady who is probably like 26 years old gets all fired up over it. So now, have you experienced that? Like young people getting fired up over the two spaces and being pissed off that she has to correct it or make a decision on whether I correct my elders or not?
I think that's ridiculous. Maybe I'm just not observant enough to even notice what people are typing to me. Like I've never noticed the two spaces, the one space, or like I'm reading a book. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of space. Never even come across it or noticed it, nor have I. No, I have not run into a youngster who is trying to force it down anyone's throat. Like I said, when I had the conversation, the woman was younger than me, but not significantly younger. Younger enough to be noticeably younger, but not number enough to probably be what would be 37 now. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so she might have been 37 then. Have not had anyone go angsty about the spaces on me. I could ask my kid. I'm sure I could get him to get angsty about it.
Yeah. So I just thought it was funny that someone got fired up that it. And granted, this person's like the assistant marketing director, so they have to put stuff out into the public. So they're very focused on what. So we're not talking about informal emails. We're talking about stuff that goes out. But again, I think most of the public isn't even paying attention to spaces after periods anymore.
Well, here's the thing. The same people worry about whether 1 or 2 spaces are going to be noticed on their advert are the same people that when you're writing up a procedure doc are arguing for 20 minutes over whether the word should be caught or capture.
Yeah, you're probably right. They're a little too precise. So it got me thinking though, Obi, there's a bunch of people like everyone under 37 doesn't know about the toothpaste thing. So then it got me thinking, what are some other things that young people that I just took for granted growing up? Maybe not growing up, maybe in my adult years, though, I took for granted that people are now maybe at the same stage in their life and they have no clue what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you an example. Tonight, I used my phone, threw it up on Android Auto, and I got directions to go where I needed to, had traffic and everything. But there was a time in my life that I planned out and I went on MapQuest and I printed directions out and I had them sitting next to me in the car and I followed the map.
You go better than that.
Kids today don't know MapQuest. They do have no idea. Hey, go MapQuest that.
MapQuest. I before the aughts, even in the 1990s something, I wanted to travel. I was taking a road trip and going to several cities, and we went to AAA, and they gave us
give you the book,
the little book with the flip map. So like, you literally had to be like flipping pages after page, and if you got lost in the middle of the night, which we did, the only thing we knew was we were going west, and that there was a huge, I can't remember which interstate running north and south we had to hit, and we hadn't hit it yet. So we're just like, we're just taking this road in the middle of the night till we hit the interstate. And hopefully when we hit the interstate, we'll know whether we have to go north or south on this interstate to get to where we wanted to go. But it was, none of my phone going, turn right.
Yeah. Now we get so pissed because we didn't realize 800 feet was like 200 feet.
Right.
and we missed the right. We're like, damn, you said 800 feet. That was like 200 feet.
Right.
But you just have to like plan stuff out.
Plan it.
There was a time I was at the Olympics and we had gone out drinking. This was in 96 in Atlanta, in Georgia. And we had all gone out drinking, and we had one guy who had Lyme disease and he was on antibiotics, so he couldn't drink. So he was designated driver. We went out, got pretty banged up, except him, and he's driving us back to where we had to go. And again, no phones. This was on the fly, right? So you couldn't print out MapQuest either because we were traveling down in Atlanta. So you just had to rely on the guy in the back seat who told you how to get back to his house. Well, we all fell asleep, and the guy driving didn't feel like waking us up for some reason, and we went an hour out of our way. We woke up, and the guy in the back seat was like, "Where the hell are we?" Guy driving was like, "I don't know. I'm going straight like you told me to." The guy go, "You didn't make the right." And then we found out we're like in KKK clan, land in Georgia, and we had to do a quick U-turn. But again, that doesn't happen today. Kids today don't know what it's like to get lost in the middle of the night, Obi. So I threw that out there, MapQuest. And another thing I think kids don't know about.
Wait, before you go on,
okay,
I got one for you. I've got one for you. So I was watching a movie that was made in 2023, and it's about a high school kid, and they had a real high school age senior playing the high school age kid, but the movie is taking place in 1970, and he had to dial a phone, and he did not know how to dial the phone. So turn dials, not a clue. Digital phones they can figure out, but
rotary phones.
Phone.
I think, I believe that one. I believe most kids aren't going to know rotary phones. I wouldn't even, if I put a rotary phone in front of someone, they didn't know how to use it, I probably wouldn't laugh at them that hard, if you know what I'm saying.
I do, because I actually remember learning how to dial a rotary phone. Like that was a skill, like you had to learn, like you have to go all the way to the end.
Well, right? You had to have patience.
Yeah.
And if you didn't wait, you dialed the wrong number.
Yes. So like it was actually a skill. It wasn't just like, if you put a push button phone in front of a kid and they couldn't dial it, you could laugh at them because it'd be like, it looks just like your phone, dude. But you're right. I didn't say I was laughing at him. I just said they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's the one I think most people know about. Another one is the payphone. People don't know what payphones are anymore. Like the joy of getting a beep on your beeper and you having to go use the payphone, right?
Yeah.
So on this list I looked at, not only did we get to use payphones, but we also had memorized the phone number we were going to call on that payphone.
I feel like this is a conversation we've talked about way too many times because we old and we really mean that shit.
Yeah, and also on that, we also knew the trick where if we would need mom and dad to pick us up, we would just call them collect, and when it said who's calling, we would yell, "Come pick me up" in the recording, and mom and dad would know to come pick us up. And then we'd have to
Yes.
wait another 20 minutes for them to get their sweet ass in gear to come pick us up because they weren't waiting for us to call.
No, we had to hope that they even got the message right, that they answered the phone.
Yeah, exactly. And even though you said I think practice is going to be over at 5:30, they were still surprised when you called at 5:30 to come pick, and they'd be there at like 20 to or 10 to 6.
Yeah.
But here's one that I think is a little off the radar that we took for granted at the time. I don't think it was that long ago, but I think kids today would think you're nuts. Is the whole idea of saying, "Don't call me until after 9 o'clock tonight, because then my minutes are free, and I have no minutes. You can't call me before 9 o'clock."
So I don't like, I remember those times. And I remember the first guy among my friends to get a cell phone. And we used to joke with him, like, oh, you got to call him. Oh, minutes. He can't talk to you because we're all on landline. He's the first to cell. Minutes. Yeah. That was like, we used to rip him all the time. Of course, he was the only one with the cell phone. And then once we all got him, I think that kind of eased up. But yeah, absolutely remember that nonsense.
Yeah, so that was a real thing. So for those of you who don't know, if you're young and listening to us, you would get like if you got the starter plan right, you got maybe 30 minutes a month, right, Obi?
Yeah.
But then you would have unlimited nights and weekends. So after from 9 p.m. to like 6 a.m., unlimited and all weekend you could. But if it was between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., 30 minutes a month. And then it was like $1 a minute over that, something ridiculous.
Yeah, and you can, and thinking back, obviously phones were made for business people back then because that was the people who had to make calls during the day. Kids did not have to make calls during the day. We only made calls during the weekend and after school. So, yeah, it was actually a good thing for a kid, a bad thing for an adult.
So I think we joke about the nights and weekends thing with cell phones, but I think the other thing that probably doesn't get enough play is the whole idea that we used to have to pay to call long distance.
Yes, that was a different type of call, a long distance call.
And we're talking from your landline. If you called from Poughkeepsie, New York to Rutgers, it cost money.
Wait, I'm going to put this in perspective. Ed, when you were growing up, how many numbers did a phone number have?
Well, I think it had the same as it does now.
Yeah, but you only remembered, we memorized numbers. But
oh, yeah, you didn't need to know the area code because if you were in the area code, you could call within the area code free. If you had to put the area code in, that meant you were spending money.
And that's how you knew it, right? If it was like a 7 digits or 10 digits.
And if you had I remember, and again, 30 years ago. So if you're 30 years old today, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And if you're 37, you probably weren't old enough to know what I'm talking about. But 30 years ago, I would get yelled at by my parents when the phone bill came because I'd be home on break from college and I'd call my girlfriend who was 3 hours away and it would cost money. Every minute was like, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 cents a minute. I don't know, something crazy. And that shit added up.
Wait, yeah. No, but I'm going to go back to the 7 and 10 because I am remembering a story a little bit. Please don't ask me, but there was this girl who I met through a friend. And I actually got her number. And she gave me her number. And when I called, it was not the right number. And I was like, all right, these things happen, right? Because people used to lie and give you fake numbers. And then her friend called me and said, well, why haven't you called her? And I was like, I did. She gave me the wrong number. And that's when it realized she lived in New York City. And I needed a different area code than my Bergen County phone number at the time.
Makes sense.
Yes.
But it would also cost money to call her. Was she worth the spending the money? Maybe that's why she thought you weren't calling. Thought it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. We only ever talked. So probably wasn't worth whatever of my parents' money I spent on her.
So think about this though, Obi. We talked about things that cost money. The 2 spaces after a period was free.
It was free, but it's more expensive now to use 2 spaces because it's an extra bit of paper and you start spreading that out over thousands and thousands of sentences, you're cheaper to just use 1 space. Save paper.
That's a good point. But does paper even cost money anymore?
It does if you have it yourself. You're not stealing it from your company. It's a matter of.
You know what? I just got a notice from Hewlett Packard because I have one of their inkjet printers and I pay monthly for the ink and then they mail it to me. I just got to notice that they'll do the same thing for paper. So they'll count how many pages I print each month, and they'll send me a new ream of paper when I'm about to be out.
This is at work, I presume.
No, this is at my house.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm considering doing it because there's nothing worse than going to the printer after you just printed something and finding out you only printed half of it because you're out of paper and you look around and there's no paper in the house and you got to go to Staples.
Okay, yeah. Just buy a whole box, and when you get to the last ream, replace it.
Yeah, you're acting like it's toilet paper.
I have a box. I'm staring at it right over here to my right. And I can tell you right now, there's 3 reams left in it. And when I get down to 1 ream, I will replace it.
Yeah, I'm not investing that much in paper. I'm like more of a just-in-time inventory guy with paper, I think.
Okay, well then you need to spend the extra money to have Hewlett Packard stare at your printing and let you know when you need it.
I think so. That's what I'm gonna do. So, Obi, you got anything else that makes you feel old other than when you get out of bed in the morning, your knees hurt?
I got a good story about my knees hurting. Maybe we can get back to that. But I when you started with this grammar thing, the one thing that did come to mind, which I don't know about if it's old or not, and I don't even know what the actual right answer is, but I hear a lot of people debating it, is this Oxford comma. Do you know the Oxford comma?
I've heard it, but I didn't do well in English, so I never really paid attention to it in English class either.
Okay, so it's how I was taught to write. And the Oxford comma is if you're saying there was a dog, a cat, and a sheep.
Oh, right. And do you put the comma after the cat and before the and?
Yes.
So I'm a big no comma before the and because I was taught in school that it was up to my discretion if I wanted to put a comma there. So I've been consistent my whole life not putting a comma there, Obi.
So I may have been taught that and then decided at my discretion to put the comma. I was a big comma putting the comma there person, but now the grammar people really think I'm a moron. So I've faded away from that comma. So you're doing
wait a second. So you think you're a moron for putting the comma there?
I have seen many conversations now that makes me think that is an unnecessary comma. I believe that the Oxford comma is unnecessary unless it is in fact necessary. You should not have it. And there's like examples of when it is and isn't, like when you would actually need it.
So here's what pisses me off about the whole thing, Obi. My whole life, I was told it was up to my discretion, just be consistent. So I've consistently not used the comma. I've recently bought into some AI technology called Grammarly. A lot of people probably know about this, and it corrects everything you write. Spell checks, grammar, even tone and all of it, right? It's awesome. It insists to put the comma there. Insists. So now you're telling me I'm upset that I'm listening to some freaking AI putting a comma there, and now you're telling me I look like a moron for doing it? I'm not too happy about that.
I am telling you, a lot of the TikToks that I'm listening to, they do not like the Oxford comma. They want that thing dead. Dead, they want it.
Well, Grammarly's all about it.
Really? I wonder if that's why the grammar people on TikTok are so constantly talking about it, is because of how many people are using Grammarly, and Grammarly's bringing it back. I bet you that's part of what's going on.
It could be, because everything I type now, I get it. I'm going to tell you right now, it tells you, it gives you stats. Grammarly gives you stats.
And, this is how you still haven't learned at 50 years old how to write.
It tells me what my most popular or my most common mistake is, and it's commas. Because I don't do the comma, and I get flagged every time, Obi.
Okay. Well, I'm standing up for your right not to use it. I bet you if you go into settings, you can turn off Oxford commas.
I'm going to have to look into that, especially if I don't want to look like an idiot and moron to these TikTokers.
That's right. You know, they're setting the stage. But back to feeling old in my knees. True story. Literally this week, I went to sleep on Friday with my right ankle, my right knee, right elbow, and right wrist all hurting. Part of that was Cumdo getting hit on the right arm, but just my knee, and it happened again on Saturday. Still hadn't healed. I woke up on Sunday. I'm like, wow, only my knee hurts. And then I realized Literally, my thought was, wow, only my knee hurts. What the fuck? It's my left knee now. My
So Obi, I thought where you're going to go with this story is you're going to tell me all of those things were iced
oh,
because to tell me all those things hurt for an old person, that's normal, like big deal. Mine hurts too. Now, if you're going to go iced, now that's the next level.
the knee had the CBD infused Bengay on it. It did get that far.
Interesting. You're going
Yes.
with the CBD. Does it work?
No,
Okay.
no. The only thing that works on that is it's like not as it's like it is basically Bengay, but super duper like weak ass Bengay with a little bit of CBD, but it's just enough warmth at night when it was hurting to help me go to bed. Certainly, and it not as bad of an odor as Bengay. But that's
I
all
was
it
just going to say, so is that another thing young kids don't know about is how bad Bengay smells?
I think they probably do because they probably have family members who use it, but
I
maybe
mean,
not.
Bengay 40 years ago stunk to high heaven.
Yes, yeah, it was horrific. It was
Smells a
horrific.
smells a little better now though. That's
It,
good to know.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is I don't know what this I said, oh, let me try it. The CBD level is super low, but the CBD on the thing it says CBD. Then you look in the back and it's like Lyodine or whatever the stuff is in Bengay, but lower than my Bengay, and then like 0.005 CBD. So it's not even real CBD.
I don't think anything's real CBD anymore, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, no, it's real CBD. I mean, it's not real potent. I don't know what the potent stuff has.
So Obi, before we wrap up, because we're starting to get into the sucking territory, I do want to circle back to last week's episode or last episode. We did ask people if they thought we should go on TikTok or not, and I don't think we're ready to go there yet. We had some mixed. Well, I don't know if we had mixed reviews. I mean, we did have a lot of people saying that we should be on TikTok because they want to see if the eye cream is working. We had 6 votes for that, which was 75% of the votes. A lot of votes. So I'm not sure, but some people think that the TikTok, we're 2 old men, we're not ready for it. Wondering if us old farts use TikTok. So not really sure if we should go there yet, but I think at the end of the day, the feedback is great. I think we want more people to continue to leave messages for us on this episode. Certainly let us know what is something that makes you feel old that young kids don't know about. Or if you're a young kid listening to this, what are the things that just drive you nuts about us old people? We want to hear about it.
I'm sorry. I am reading the comments on our last episode, and I this one person, I don't know, what they were thinking when they wrote, but posting video content on TikTok will ultimately decide whether certain fans are excited or frightened by the prospect of Obi's very good oral skills. I made it through that without cracking up. Very impressed with myself. But okay. Yeah, I'm not sure that those things are answered. Nope, no one needs to ruin the illusion and see what you guys actually look like. And the Cologuard stuff.
Yeah, people definitely think we should get the Cologuard sponsorship.
We deserve it. We deserve it. Cologuard and the Bengay. We're now.
Well, we're going for Bengay. We are definitely simping. We're simping for Cologuard and Bengay.
Yes. So put the word out there. If you know anybody in marketing, hey, apparently your wife has a young employee coworker who's in marketing. Maybe they know someone who markets for Bengay and or Cologuard. We're here for it. We're here for it.
I just wonder if you say Bengay and Cologuard, do you put a comma after Bengay?
Bengay, Cologuard, and CBD.
Okay. All right, good. As long as we get it right.
And the thing about all those things is they don't suck. We suck. And the charm is that we suck.
Yeah, we don't actually suck. Oh, we get that right. The charm is that we
yes,
suck.
We don't.
Oh, I guess that means we suck.
Yeah, yeah.
All these years, I didn't realize we were saying we suck.
The look on your face right now is why we should be on TikTok. I'm Obi. That said, talk to you later.